Good evening and welcome to Admin Chat. We are so delighted this evening to be presenting an interview with Monique Helstrom. For those of you who haven't yet met Monique, Monique is the former EA to Simon Sinek, and she is also the founder of her own company, OnPoint. Hi Monique, how are you?
Hi Lucy, how are you?
Yes, great, thank you. Really, really good. I wanted to begin by asking you about your background. I mean, it's the obvious place to begin, but where did you come from? What were your parents? What did they do? You know, what was the beginning all about?
Sure. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a Philly girl born and raised, and those in the States know what that means. And I was born into a very organized, logistically focused household. I have been this way since the inception, pretty much. My parents were very organized. My mother was, a secretary at the IRS. She was an office manager for her whole life. My father was in the Army and then became a contractor. And his workshops were always very organized. I mean, every screw had its own bin that was labeled. And so I really grew up knowing how to organize things, knowing how to put things into a process, knowing how to take a big project and break it down into steps. It was just sort of something that my family just did. It was our personality. And then it wasn't until about college that I realized that not everyone has that same upbringing. And I remember walking around to friends' dorm rooms and being like, why do you have stuff all over the place? Why don't you have organized bins with labels on them? And so I started to organize my friends' dorm rooms for dollars on the side, so I can make some money to buy pizza and beer. And that's really where the entrepreneurial and the knowing that I could use this skill set for my job, for profession, that's really where that sort of sparked. And since then, I've always been in a logistically oriented, process-oriented job. I was a event planner for 10 years. I did support a sales team for a while, a director of sales. I actually went into sales for a hot minute just to see if I could do it, and it was not my strength. Became a professional organizer and then went straight into the EA world, and I've been there ever since.
So what was your first EA role?
Technically, I didn't really have the title of executive assistant until I was with Simon, but looking back and knowing what I did and what the role of an EA is, I've sort of been in that role my whole life. Even as an event planner, I was the assistant director of events. I supported the director, and I was always in that function of supporting the director of meetings and events. Even though I did my own thing as well, I still remember acting in this way, really supporting that person, helping them grow and lifting them up. So technically 1998 was my first EA role.
Oh my word. And I know that you had a very original title, didn't you? You were Chief of Simon.
Chief of Simon, yep. Titles are titles are titles, and it was a small company, so we could do, we did get to pick that. And as a small company, you don't get to fit into one little box. You in small companies, you sort of are the jack of all trades a lot. So he really said to me, what do you want your title to be? And I, we batted around a few funny ideas and landed on Chief of Simon.
It's a great one. And so how did you get the job? You knew him before, didn't you, before you worked for him, I think?
I did. When I owned my professional organizing business in Los Angeles, I also did some event planning on the side. And right when Simon started off in about 2007, I think, it was before the book, before the TED Talk. It was very early on in his speaking career. He hadn't done that many. And he spoke at an event that I was producing, that I was doing on the side. And so we became friends, and I really appreciated everything that he had to say. I really believed in his message. I believed in the world that he wanted to create. So we became friends for quite a long time. But I was in Los Angeles. He was in New York. And then I did end up moving back to Philadelphia in 2011. And shortly after moving back there, he hired me on full time to organize his life.
Fantastic. And, for those people who are maybe been living under a rock or who don't know what TED Talks are, maybe you would just like to explain who Simon is, because very occasionally I'm surprised when I say Simon Sinek and I talk about his TED Talks and things, and people go, no, I'm not familiar with that. So just explain, because he's had an enormous impact, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Simon is an author, an optimist, author of 4 books, most well known for the first book, Start With Why. He has the 4th most popular TED Talk of all time on the same topic. So if you go to the TEDs and you go to their recommends, number 4, that's been Simon for 5 or 6 years now. It's been quite a long time. Very, thought leader. He believes in inspiring people to do the things that inspire them, and is really creating a world in which, business is really going to be flipped on its head.
Yeah, amazing. And what's your why?
My why is to execute on the unique things that help others feel loved, supported, and safe.
Ah, okay. You thought about that one, I can tell.
I did. I didn't have the words for it. I cheated because I had the king of the why as my partner in crime. So very early on, we did a why discovery, but I didn't really have the words for it. I sort of knew what it was about, and I knew why I needed to have this purpose, if that makes sense. And so I didn't really have the words, and only in the past few years I've really had those words. That's really what makes me happy, is to find the unique things that makes each individual person feel loved, supported, and safe, and do those things to my best ability to help them feel supported.
Fantastic. So talk to me a little bit about what an average day looks like, because supporting somebody like Simon must be all over the place.
It definitely was all over the place. It was the best education I could have had. It was really one of the most fantastic learning opportunities I've ever been given. I really, we had lots of speaking events. I think our highest number was 97 events in 1 year. And I really, as the executive assistant, I sort of really acted in a producer role. Anywhere that he needed to show up to, I was the one that sort of did everything, made all the pieces work in order to get him there. Did a lot of the contracting and negotiating and his PR and his events and all of those sorts of things. But I love that. I mean, one of the things that I think is the greatest benefit of this role that we have is the diversity, is constant excitement, is every day doesn't look the same. And that was really one of the things that I loved about it.
Absolutely. And what about the flip side? What are the things that are so difficult? Because I would have thought doing that number of events is really rough.
Yes, I mean, there was a lot of management. I think, specifically speaking for me, the thing that was the hardest was traveling with Simon and having to do this role at the same time, because I lived on planes, trains, and automobiles, and was at every event with him. And these were, sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8-hour events where I'd be not on my computer, not answering people's emails, not scheduling things. And I still had to do the typical role of an EA, but I also had to be a traveler while doing it. And it was very trying at times. I don't think I slept much the last decade, and certainly didn't eat well the last decade. But, now I know where I could have done better, and that was really on me, not on him. And but I think generally speaking, if I had to really put a pin in what's the hardest thing for an EA, the hardest part of being an EA is the fact that we have to base our priorities off of somebody else's priorities. And when those priorities aren't known, or when they're ever changing, it's very difficult to do this job. We're really looking to figure out from our higher ups, our executives, what's the most important thing that we need to do? What is our purpose? Why are we doing this? What are we here for? And having that ability helps you make the decisions in the future. But without that nugget, without that piece of culture, which unfortunately a lot of executives don't actually know how to communicate, or don't communicate often, it's extremely difficult to do this job on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think you really have to have an executive that's willing to communicate and is willing to delegate. And you also have to have an assistant who steps up. And I know that that's something you're passionate about, because I've heard you talk at conferences. Talk to us a little bit about that.
About having, well, it's easy for those of us in this role to assume, and I'm going to say the word, the martyr role, because I say that from experience. I've lived in the martyr space for a long time. We're mothers, we're caregivers, we love to help other people grow, and I think sitting in that martyr space is a difficult a difficult spot. And when you can crack out of that shell and really take onus and responsibility for asking for the things that you need, for using proper communication, for giving context, giving feedback, all of these things that one would do in a normal relationship, we tend not to do in our work relationships. So I'm all about not only having the executive assistant take ownership of their part in all of this, but help others do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, obviously, if you started out as an EA in the 1990s, you must have seen a lot of changes. Can you talk to us about those and what you think the most important ones are?
Well, when I started off, I used to tell people that I was an executive assistant, and they would say, "What does that mean?" Oh, so you're a secretary, or so you're an office manager, and it just, and I still think this is there. Some people just don't know that we exist. It's very strange to hear that when we all know that CEOs exist, we all know that executives exist, and we all know that these executives have help, but for some reason this layer, this silver lining that borders our executives is forgotten about. And it certainly was back then. And there was little to no education at all. So I'm happy to see that now, I feel like we're at a low simmer right now. I'm not sure we're at a boil yet, but I think the profession itself is really starting to talk. It's starting to simmer. We're hearing about this more and more, and that's the way that we're going to really change the profession, is when we keep talking about it.
Definitely. And you're now out on the road in your own right, talking at conferences right the way across America. And I am hoping very much that you will be in London with us next year, although we haven't announced that yet. So shh, if you're listening, it's still a secret. But tell me what you're focusing on, Monique. What are you talking about?
Sure. So I talk with both assistants as well as executives to help them build a powerful partnership. So I can speak directly to the executive assistant community or admin community. I tend to generalize it as those that function in a support capacity, because the titles are very different for us, but the work is still the same. Those people that support a person or persons. So I speak directly to them, help them rejuvenate their performance, help them reclaim who they are, help them feel positive and use their strength set and use their skills as a positive thing. And so helping them rebuild, helping them build their skill set. But also I speak with executives on the other side of things, because they have never been taught how to have a powerful partnership with their assistants either. And I feel for the executive community, because these folks just one day were really good at their jobs and got a promotion and got the corner office and use of the executive coffee machine. And somebody said, "Here's Linda. She's your person. She's going to know everything about you and do everything that you need her to do. Go, good luck." And there really is no education there. There's no training there. There's no, how do I delegate? How much do I delegate? How do I give tasks without sounding like a jerk? How do I trust? How do I communicate? These things are just, generally they're not taught in business, let's be honest. But for this very specific, very personal relationship, I feel like the training has to be enhanced. So I'm very excited about being out there, helping executives understand this relationship, help them really put some framework to it, and then help them build a more powerful version of it.
Can you give us a couple of tips on best ways to communicate either way between assistant and executive, or executive and assistant?
Communication, generally speaking, I think is something that I have a lot of, my soapbox is communication. I feel communication has really been something that's been pushed aside, and we tend to focus on what we can type as opposed to what we can say. So generally speaking, I have a lot to say with communication, but I think the nugget that changed my how I did my job and what tends to help other people is context. That word, we tend to, as an executive, we tend to give the assistant the content, do the thing, book the thing, call the person, schedule the thing. But we as the assistants don't know why. And innovation lies in context. We can do so much more when we know why these things are happening or what the end goal is. So if I can get context from my executive, Why are we doing this? Where is it going? What does this project mean? Where are we leading it to? Then when I get a task, I might be able to do 10 times more things around it just because I know where we're going. I know where the finish line is. I know where the race ends, as opposed to just knowing where each mile marker is. So I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, having an executive and the assistant offer context as to why they're doing what they're doing will really change the relationship.
I so agree with you. I think, making sure that you understand rather than just know has got to be where it is. And asking the questions. I think so often the assistants are scared to ask the things that they need to ask because they're concerned they're going to look stupid or that they're getting above their station.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a tough world that, if we don't ask for what we need, if we don't ask for help or don't feel that we can say, I don't know how to do this, there's a real problem there, because that's our jobs, is to figure out how to do the thing. So by us keeping it quiet or us not asking for what we need, can lead to real problems, can lead to a lot of stress and anxiety.
Definitely. Now, tell me a bit about OnPoint, because you started your own business and I know that you're doing the speaking, but what else is OnPoint? You've become an entrepreneur in your own right. Well, I know you were always very entrepreneurial, but actually launching your own business is something different again, huh?
Yes, I'm happy that I did it before, because I made all the mistakes on the first go round. And now I feel like I have at least a little bit of knowledge about how to run my own business. I really never thought I would do it again. But it was interesting when I left Simon's, I started the company really with the intent of helping other businesses grow. Anecdotally, my friends call me the empire builder, because that's what I'm good at. I take people's dreams and I make them a reality. That's sort of my stupid human trick, and I love that. So I really started the business with the intent of doing that. And then if I were to get asked to speak, that would sort of be this thing that I did on the side. My world has always been in support of another human. I have always helped another human be the best versions of themselves. I can honestly say I've probably never done it for myself a whole lot. So when I started the company, I definitely planted a lot of seeds. I definitely was doing a lot of things. And really the speaking and the training has taken over the majority of the company at this point. And I'm being asked to speak more and more. I'm getting asked to share my ideas more and more. And it's stretching me. It's stretching me to a whole new level. It's the most wonderful feeling of uncomfortable I think I've had in a long time. But I'm loving it. So yeah, we do training and speaking. I certainly do. I have a small consortium of speakers that I work with as well, that also believe the things that I believe and help build teams and help people build partnerships. And I'm really helping to bring them out into the world and help their ideas spread as well.
How fantastic. Really, really great. And what's your vision for yourself? I mean, have you got a vision that says, okay, this is where I want to get to as a business? What would you like to be doing if you could be doing anything?
I'm thrilled to be a part of this executive assistant community right now. I think it's a wonderful time to be involved with this group of people. I mean, this is really going to be, if you've ever heard Simon talk, you've heard the law of diffusion of innovation, and it takes, the tipping point. It's the standard bell curve. And I feel like right now we have all of these people out there talking about this. And I feel like there's going to be a point in the next 2 years where this tips, and the executive assistant community is respected for who we are and what we do. And there is education, and we do have support, and we do have a little container to put us in. And I'm thrilled to be a part of that, and I want to continue to be a part of that, and also help executives, have a more powerful partnership with their assistants. Because if we can figure that one out, I think there's no stopping a lot of companies here, because it's the missing ingredient that I think a lot of companies need.
Very definitely, because actually, if the assistant and the executive are communicating properly, that drops directly to the bottom line.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I know you're doing a lot of work with Bonnie Low Craman, and you just did an event that was in New York, which was aimed at assistants and executives. And that's a relatively new thing. I mean, a couple of people have done that before, or tried to do that before, pretty unsuccessfully. But I understand that yours was a resounding success. How did that work? I mean, you had executives and assistants both come and both talk about how the partnership was working.
We did. We had them both come with their assistants. It was funny. We got many emails saying, "Oh, is this right? You want me to come together with my executive?" And yes, we do. We had a wonderful breakfast event in New York, and we had a number of people, standing room only, that came, and we helped the assistants grow their skills. We helped the executives understand the assistant position and help them build their skill set together. It was an incredible event. It was very transformative, I think, both for Bonnie and myself, to really see how this could work. It was interesting to see how everyone walked in with, a little trepidation. They were a little skeptical about what was going to happen, especially the executives, let's be honest. They were really kind of walking in there, and you could see a lot of them were coming in there just to sort of satisfy their EA and say, I came, I'm going to listen. But then you would see in the middle, they would go, and you would see the light bulbs, ding, ding, oh, and scribbling notes, ding, ding. And I got a number of emails afterwards from executives saying, I had no idea what I didn't know. And I've gotten emails from EAs afterwards saying, I didn't know what number EA I was. My executive has 4 of us. I didn't know where I stood. I didn't know what my position was. And as soon as we left this event, we went to coffee, and he said to me, you're my number 1. This is how we're going to do this. This is what we're going to do. The communication started, and she said, I've never been happier in my entire life. So that's not the winning draw to keep doing this. I don't know what is.
Monique, that's just phenomenal. It was interesting. I was talking to somebody earlier on this week who is from a new AI product for assistants, which I think is very exciting. And we're going to, be pushing that out there shortly. And I think helping them to do that. But one of the things she said, which made me go, whoa, she said, we want to teach executives how to be better strategic partners to their assistants. I think we're talking, all of us, so much about how the assistants can be strategic partners to their executives. But actually, there's a huge piece there about teaching the executives how to be strategic partners. And we're missing it.
We're missing it a lot. And again, I'm not blaming, I'm not pointing fingers. I certainly don't want this to be a fight of who's to blame for this. I honestly think executives were never taught. And in this current world that we live in, the partnership and the importance on this partnership is not really talked about either. So, I don't blame them. And I certainly don't think that there's a way that we can fix it. It is a fixable thing as long as we can keep talking about it.
I agree. And Bonnie has a great stat where she says that the average age somebody gets management training is 42 years old. 42. That's a whole heap of executives walking around without a clue how to manage the people they're looking after. And we kind of assume that they know, but they really don't. And like you say, it isn't their fault at all because they're never trained. I mean, certainly the first time I got an assistant, I sat there thinking, no clue, but I've got to act like I'm a manager, so I'll tell her what to do. And she pulled me up by my bootstraps. She said, that isn't what I do at all. Shall I train you how to use me? And I know that part of the reason I'm so successful is because she was so amazing and really taught me how best to use her.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a real thing. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And, that's what we're out here trying to do, both, those of us in the community, and especially Bonnie, as you mentioned. Bonnie's been my mentor for years, and I honestly can say I don't think I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for her. For those listeners out there who don't know who she is, Google her immediately. She's one of the most wonderful humans I've ever met. She's one of the smartest humans I've ever met. And if there's anyone who's a champion for this community, it's by far and wide Bonnie Low-Kramen.
Yeah, Bonnie's phenomenal. Yeah, great. Okay, so talk to me about a career highlight.
A career highlight. Oh, let's see. I had so many opportunities when I was working with Simon. It's so hard to say because I did travel with him everywhere. And I got to meet so many wonderful people, so many wonderful humans. I think, you know, I'm an Army kid, and I've had nothing but respect for the United States military and just military in general. Those people that put themselves out there and say, you know, today I'm not going to let anyone hurt my brothers and sisters. And there's something about that that I deeply respect, because that's sort of who we are as well. Today, nobody's going to hurt my executive. I'm going to stand watch. And that's what I feel like our military does. So I've had lots of opportunities to work with the military. And I think if I really look back, some of those experiences, really being able to shake the hands of the people that keep me safe at night, there's just nothing that will ever fill me up like that. I think probably those are some of my grandest memories of the work with Simon. But in the past year, you know, it's been constant new experiences. You know, this is the first time that I'm really out there being a speaker on my own. And, you know, I just, there's so many highlights this year. I can't even pinpoint one.
Now, tell me, what, in your opinion, makes an exceptional assistant?
I think at its very core, when an assistant understands that their job is to take care of a human, not do things on a list. I think that at the core of it, if you don't have that, if you think your job is just to check things off a box and do stuff, there's only so far that you're going to go, and there's only so far that you're going to help your executive go. But I think when you really can look at the human behind it and say, I want to make this human better, I want to make this human feel supported, I want to make this human feel safe, then I think everything else is very organic after that. Without that, I think that's the bottom building block in my estimation. That's
a wonderful, wonderful way of putting it. I love it. I haven't heard it said like that before, and it's like a whoa, okay, on went the light bulb.
You know, it's something that I think is forgotten, especially for those of us that have been in the profession for a long time. Sometimes you tend to just say, oh, I'm just going to check, and you know what to do, and you sort of get into what I call the performance loop, where you're just doing tasks and you're checking things off a box and you're just sort of swinging around the circle for a while. And when you can stop and pull back and recognize the human and say, who is this person? What is their personality? Like, get to know them, figure out what are their strengths finders? Is their love language? What did they do growing up that they don't do anymore? Did they play baseball? Like, find out who this human is, because there is so much good information in that. There's so much meaty context in that I think it'll just open up a whole new world.
Really agree. That's just so wonderful. Okay, and then I'm going to ask you, if you were to be giving advice to a brand new assistant going into the role, what would be your advice to them? Where should they start?
Where should they start? Well, you know, I think the knowledge, Emily Burley says this from ELS all the time. She says, this is a career. And knowing that this is a career that you can start and end your life with, that's amazing. This is not a jumping off point. This is, for so many people say, I fell into this job by accident, and it's sort of this thing that I'm going to do in the interim until I get a real job. I would hope that all the new assistants out there, the new people coming up in this world, understand that this is a profession and yearn to solidify their craft, yearn to learn about it, yearn to want more education, want to build their skill set, want to build their strengths, and to ask for that, and to really raise their hand and say, you know, the days of madmen are gone. The days of the secretary of the those are gone. Those days are over. We can watch them on Mad Men only. But now, as an executive assistant, you could be an event planner, a COO, a chief of staff, a board expert, a culture keeper. It's endless as to what your abilities could be. So knowing that your career could be wide, not deep, you know, you're not going to just kind of go up the ranks like most people do, that your career could really be widely spanned with different subject matters. Knowing that and appreciating that, I think, is a great first step.
Definitely. And then to my very final question, which is that we're obviously about to go not just into a new year, but into a new decade. Can you, what can you see in the future? What can we see in your future, firstly? Where are you looking at going to in the next decade? But also, what do you think is going to happen to the profession?
Sure. So where I want to be, I want to continue what I'm doing. I want to help support this executive assistant community and do what I can to raise it up and have it be something that people know and understand. And similarly on the executive side, if I could, I want to do 100 speeches next year for executives that just to help them have a more powerful partnership. I want to just open their eyes to what the possibility is. I would love to, write more and do more things and just get out there and start talking about this and start letting people know that this is a real thing. And then for the profession, again, I think right now, I heard a great expression a couple of weeks ago that somebody said that 2020 is the year of shaking the tree. When you take an apple tree and you shake it, the dead apples fall off. And that's good. That helps the tree grow. When you can get rid of the things that are weighing you down and the things that don't serve you anymore and hold on to the things that are, it helps you prosper. And I feel like as a profession, that's what we're doing. We're shaking the tree and we're getting rid of those words that we used to use, and we're getting rid of the I'm not valued and the confidence build. And we're getting rid of all the crap that we don't need anymore. And we're taking what's left and we're building it up and we're making it something new and helping it develop. And I'm so happy to be a part of that.
I have the distinct impression that you're going to be right at the heart of the next decade and that we will be seeing an awful lot of you. Monique Helstrom, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. It's been a delight.
Thank you, Lucy. And I want to say back to you, thank you for everything that you do for this community. You started a community when we didn't have a community. And you started to give education for us when we didn't have any other outlets for it. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for bringing a name to this profession. And I'm happy to be a part of this with you.
Thanks, Monique.